Islam Makhachev came out and he did it on Twitter so I could understand it all. And he said, and he talked about the top 4 or 5 guys. I mean, he called them out. He called Charles by name. He called Arum by name. He said, these guys are good. He called Gaethje by name. He called Poirier by name. He said, these guys are good. They are the top guys in the world. They will never be champion as long as I'm here. And it came out of nowhere, by the way. Like, nobody was taunting him. Somewhere Islam just took this shot. And I loved it. I find Islam to be an interesting guy. But I spent a meaningful amount of time around Khabib. And it turns out Khabib is secretly really charming and really funny. But he doesn't like to do that at all times when he's doing media. He has a sportsmanship. He has a code that he follows. So I just trust that Islam has that same great sense of humor. And I wish we would get more from him. But I did think that it was interesting that he just fired this off in 160 characters or less. He just fired in response to nothing. So he then did an interview. And within the interview, he was speaking about Charles specifically. And he was talking about Arum specifically. And everybody knows that if he fought Charles, that would be a rematch. Everybody, broad stroke. But a lot of people don't know he's fought Arum. He fought Arum at a time when people didn't care about Arum, but he fought Arum at a time when people didn't care about Islam. Islam and Arum fought at a time where they were both clearly very good and did not have a fan base, and that's why they got put together, to get rid of one of them. Now, that didn't happen. They both turned out to be so good, they've still rise to the top. I'm just trying to paint that picture for you because you might not know that it's a rematch, and rematch is the entire point that Islam was speaking to. He said, I don't want to do a rematch. I'm not interested in either one of those guys. And he then had another and better idea, which was Justin Gaethje. And Justin Gaethje versus Islam and Poirier versus Islam are no-brainers. First off, the crowd wants to see him. Second, the rankings support it. Their resumes and their bodies of work, right? I mean, we got some guys with a little steadier path. If you just go look at paths as a trajectory, Benny DeRouche, who's coming off of 2 losses, has a better path. I mean, he's got 8 in a row. He's still 2 out of his last 10. But if you go look at the people that those guys fought, right, this is not a tough sell. You are not going to resist in the least. The media is not going to resist in the least. The locker room and the fellow boys with the same dream are not going to resist in the least. For Gaethje, Poirier, to both go in there with Islam, it sounds like that's what Islam wants. And that could change quickly. One thing about this sport, boy, that can change fast. Who's a killer now versus who was? I mean, Fiziev was getting worked into this mix. Gaethje got brought in to give the shine to Fiziev. That was supposed to be a pass the torch moment. It turned out Gaethje was clinging on that torch a little tighter than people had realized. I only use that to demonstrate it can change very quickly, but for right now, I do want to break this down, okay? Arum is not going to get the fight with Islam. They fought the first time because not enough people cared about Arum or Islam, and that's just a reality. Arum is now a main eventer who got a finish. He will return to a main event. Like, his star is coming, believe me. I'm talking about right now. What are we going to do next? Somebody, somewhere, wants to see Charles fight Islam. Somebody, somewhere, with influence, wants to see that fight. I'm not attempting to do what the kids call hate on the fight. But we have had Charles 3 for 3. The day the UFC announced the fight, I was live on the desk being paid by the UFC, and I was teed up the question by John Anik. My job is to put the fight over. I looked at John on live TV. I said, they're never going to fight. John's eyes got big, couldn't believe I was saying it. I was trying to catch myself too. I mean, I was trying to do as smooth as I could. There was no other smoother way to say it. Charles had stated 3 times, I'm not going to do the fight on October 22nd. 3 different times. And then an announcement comes that Charles doing the fight. Well, excuse me, I've got to hear it from Charles. I can't have a third party telling me he's going to do a fight when I have him telling us he's not going to do it. If I had a third party telling me he was going to do it versus the third party telling me he's not going to do it, I would rely on whatever information came latest, which in that case, I would co-sign Jon Anik's statement and say, yeah, they're going to do the fight. But I couldn't do that. I said, that fight's not going to happen. Who's my source? My source is Charles Oliveira. Who's your source that it is going to happen? Well, it's a press release somebody put down in front of me. Right, but I'm only bringing this to you because you got Charles 3 for 3. His last 3 times speaking about Islam is I am not going to fight Islam. We'll call it a 4th time the day that he came out and showed the paper cut above his eye to say, I'm not fighting Islam. And now you have Islam saying, I don't want to fight Charles. Who in the hell is trying to push this fight? Somebody, somewhere. Which is a really nice way of me not telling you specifically who and specifically where, though I know both. Wants to see this rematch. But that was a year ago that they asked for this request. We just haven't got around to it. Call that person back. I don't think they still want to see the fight. I believe you're relying on old information. I don't believe somebody wants to see a fight that both guys have said I don't want to do. I have never seen a fight in history for a main event and or a title, let alone both, where both participants have said, I don't want to fight that guy. If you have that ingredient of both sides, red corner and blue corner, publicly, I don't want to fight him. If you have that ingredient, there has never been a fight made. Not for a main event, not on a pay-per-view. I don't know that it's ever been made. But I also don't know all of the mid-card and curtain jerk and jobbers. I just don't. So, whoever, wherever, okay, when they wake up, check the time zone, call them back. Say, hey, I remember what you told me in February of 2023. I'm getting real close by February of 24 to making it happen. Do you still want to see that fight? Because I'm only doing it for this reason. It's one of these things. Charles doesn't want to fight Islam. Islam doesn't want to fight Charles. Islam does want to fight. He wants to fight Gaethje. Charles would like to fight. He doesn't have enough money not to. So get him a job that he's willing to go and do. There's nothing bad. There's nothing risque about this. There's nothing disrespectful. Those guys fought. Those two are warriors. They went out, they had a problem, they settled their business. It's settled. They shook hands and they walked away. Let them walk away.